Welcome to Spark Creators, a podcast that empowers kids to learn, create, and become. This podcast invites creators and entrepreneurs from all over to share their stories and ideas. We believe every kid is creative. It's just a matter of taking that first step and starting now. We hope this podcast can inspire you to create something that makes a difference in the world. If you want to stay inspired, remember to subscribe. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play, or visit us at peachandplumlab.com/podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome to Spark Creators. I'm your host Lisa. Today I'm very excited to have Tameka Montgomery, the founder of the podcast Raising Entrepreneurs, a parent's guide to fostering an entrepreneurial mindset. And she is also the president and CEO of Core Strategy Partner Inc. Finally, we got to meet each other, Tameka. Yeah. So can you say hi to everyone and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hello. Yes, I am a busy mom to 3 young entrepreneurs, which is what made this connection so challenging because not only am I a busy homeschooling mother of 3 entrepreneurs.
Wow.
Yes, I also run a consulting firm. And so in addition to kind of my passion projects with raising entrepreneurs. So life is kind of crazy.
Definitely. So where are you based right now, Tameka?
Yeah, I am in the DC metro area. So we are originally from Colorado. We moved here in 2013 when I was appointed by President Obama to lead an office and be an executive at the Small Business Administration. So we are in the DC metro area. And specifically in Tacoma Park, Maryland.
Definitely. We will dive in a little deeper to talk about the task that you did appointed by President Obama. Yeah. Basically, you told me a little bit about your family, like you have 3 kids and your husband also lives in DC right now. So tell us about your husband, and you have 3 sons, right? 3 sons, they're boys. So tell us a little bit about them and how's everything going?
Yeah. So my husband is also a business owner. So he's a real estate appraiser. So we are both busy, and we kind of tag team homeschooling. But
Wow.
our boys are 10, almost 12, and 13. And so they are all very different, and they keep us very, very busy running around with their activities or, kind of just their own entrepreneurial things. So we have a busy household.
Definitely, yeah. It's so like when you told me that you're homeschooling all your 3 boys, it's like a lot of things you have to plan and do every day on a daily basis. Yeah.
Yeah, it is challenging. I mean, because you want to make sure that you're giving your kids the best experience as possible. But you also want to, it's an interesting challenge because when you homeschool, you have so much flexibility to create a learning environment that your children can really thrive in. So you want to do that, but at the same time, you want to get stuff done. And I know for me, sometimes every child is different. And so it's like you're trying to adapt your teaching style to that child, which, I mean, as parents, we should be adapting our parenting to each child. But I have to say, I'll just be honest. Sometimes I just wish, I'm like with my boys, I'm like, can you just be an overachiever and make my job really easy for me sometimes? Do I have to struggle with you sometimes, all the time? Please give me a break. But
Definitely. Yes. But that's also why they inspired you to start this podcast, right? Raising Entrepreneurs. Yeah. So we will talk, a little more about that. Today, I think our conversation, I will divide it into 2 parts. One is we're going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, and the other one is about the podcast that you are running. About entrepreneurship, not only like about your own path, but also some opinions you have, when it comes to educating the youth and the kids about entrepreneurship. Yeah. I did a little research. I read on your website saying that when you were young, your mother actually started businesses as a way to bring extra side incomes. So basically, helping your mom along the way was your exposure to entrepreneurship in the beginning. And also you realize later helping your mom and also see how she struggled in the business actually spark a drive for you to step into this entrepreneurial path, right? So can you tell us a little bit how you got influenced by your mom, and what about your childhood? Like, do you have other people like who inspired you and kept you going in this path of entrepreneurship?
So yeah, when I was a teenager, my mom would do sell little figurines and things. And so she would have me help her out. But you know what? I don't know if I was really aware. I knew she was trying to start a business and I knew she was trying to make extra money, but I don't know if I even saw it as business and entrepreneurship per se. You know what I'm saying? I just thought,
Yeah.
oh, okay, yeah, my mother's doing something on the side to try to help out. I enjoy going shopping with her to go buy the things. And then I would help her sell. So she had a little stand or something that was inside of a nightclub. So it was inside of a nightclub. And so she would sell these little things inside the nightclub. And so, it was fun for me to hang out there, right? I was like, sure, I'll go. But you know what? That didn't put inside of me this desire to want to be a business owner. It was just an experience, as a child, as a teen. I went on to college, went on to join the Peace Corps and, did other things in life. And I think where my eye and my vision toward entrepreneurship began was I was actually living in the DC metro area. I was a presidential management fellow at the Department of Justice. And I was working in the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. And what I would do in my role is I would travel to different states. And part of my role is I would have to visit jails and lockups to ensure that they were adhering to federal policies on how to detain young people. But then also I was doing work where I was helping local communities draft strategies to address juvenile delinquency. And I did that for 2 years and I was like, I don't really like working for the government. I said, and also I decided I wanted to get out of that delinquency justice side of youth and decided that I wanted to get into youth entrepreneurship. So this was back in the end of 2000. So I quit my job here in the DC metro area, moved back to Colorado with this vision of either starting an organization for young people to foster entrepreneurship. But what happened was about a month after I got to Denver, I met a woman who had a community development organization. And her organization would buy blighted property and redevelop the property. Well, when I met her, she had recently acquired a development that was a huge development. I think it was like 37 acres with tons of buildings on this development. And one of the buildings, which was a 26,000 square foot building, she wanted to turn it into a business incubator. Not for kids, but just an adult business incubator. And I was like, I could do that. Hey, I ain't never done it before, but I have a lot of confidence in myself. So I was like, yes, I could do it. And so she hired me to open and launch this incubator. So that was back at the beginning of 2001. And so that's how I got into this entrepreneurial space. So, initially I had started thinking I was going to get in youth entrepreneurship, but I ended up, doing this other thing. And so it's kind of interesting that full circle. So that was in 2001. And then many years later, in 2017, after working, 17 years, 16 years or so in this space of fostering and supporting adult
businesses. Mm-hmm.
and small businesses, that I went back to fostering it with young people. And what kind of led me to go there is when I was so in my previous positions, when I was in Colorado, I would, like at the incubator, we would provide programs that support entrepreneurs. And so I was always fascinated by how the information that you share with entrepreneurs, how one entrepreneur can just take it and go, and you see them just really thrive. And another entrepreneur, and they both seem like they're at the same place and the same level of resources. One just seems to struggle and can't just seem to move forward. And I kind of deduced that part of that is about a mindset. And so I began to think, like, what if I could essentially brainwash my kids and rewire their brains, or create neural pathways in their brains such that this aversion to risk and stepping outside of your comfort zone, that we can create experiences for them that really helps to shape and cultivate and foster this entrepreneurial mindset. And so that's what led me to start the podcast.
Got it. Yeah. So actually, hearing your story, in the beginning, you planned to do youth entrepreneurship, but you stepped into adult entrepreneurship, helping small business owners and observing how everyone works, and really seeing some kind of need and problem, and how different mindset changes people, so that you found it is important to have kids, to have youth, including your child, to learn that mindset in order to succeed in the future as well. Yeah, which is really cool. I think it's really a lesson that you learn from real life experience, bringing that into the podcast, and basically that formed the basic foundation for you interviewing other people to learn about the mindset, right? It's great to learn. Yeah, so you started your business journey or entrepreneurship journey back in Colorado. That's the first phase, but your journey in entrepreneurship thing seems like have several phases, right? So could you tell us in detail what kind of stages have you gone through? What do they mean to you, like those different phases? Yeah, and especially the highlights that you were pointed by President Obama, and also later you decided to go into like funding your own company like that.
Yeah, so it is, it's so interesting how life works, because I was an English major in college. So this track that I'm on is, has no connection for the most part, on the surface, to what I got my undergraduate degree in. And, I got my master's in public administration. But I think, going to Colorado, and working in this space of entrepreneurship, what's interesting is that right before I got the appointment from President Obama, I had actually switched roles. And so I was no longer running a small business center. I was actually executive director of a business leadership foundation called the Denver Metro Chamber Leadership Foundation. And so I was like, oh, okay. I was ready to move on from entrepreneurship and small business to do something a little different. But about 8 months into that role, I got tapped for this appointment at the Small Business Administration. So I was like, oh, wow, it's pulling me back in. And, so I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity. So we picked up and moved to the DC metro area. And so what was exciting about that opportunity was that I was now leading the office that oversaw for the nation programs that I was doing on the ground. So when I was in Denver, I got a local perspective, right? And a local community-based experience with supporting entrepreneurs. Then I had the opportunity to work on a federal level where I was looking at things from a national perspective and had the opportunity to design new initiatives and to impact policies and national programs to support a whole variety of different entrepreneurs. And so I really appreciated that experience, to see things on a local level, on a national level, to impact policy, to design programs. And then from there to then say, you know what, I'm ready to go off on my own. Because when I finished the administration, like a lot of people do, they go out and find other positions. And I just really took a step back to assess, okay, is that the path that feels right for me? And, I do think that I've kind of, I said I was an English major in college, but my path has looked a lot kind of different. And I think part of that is because I often will go with what feels right for me. And it did not feel right for me to go off and find and work for someone else. It just felt like this was the time for me to go off on my own. I had been doing this work for so long. It was now time for me to actually put into place all of those things, that I talk about and do. I would say for sure I was an entrepreneur, right? In the work, in my workplace, but now it was translating that entrepreneurship into entrepreneurship. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it, and to just see what I can do. And so that's what I'm doing now, and I'm hustling.
Definitely. Got it. So it looks like the role has switched from managing, helping entrepreneurs in this center, like from a regional base, and then you're zooming out to see a bigger picture at a national level. And now you're zooming into again, going into as a solo, like individual entrepreneur and really thriving in this entrepreneur thing. So you are like definitely have experienced many, different levels in terms of entrepreneurship. Yeah. Having like, the vision. And so that's why I'm especially interested in learning, besides say what you have said about the mindset about entrepreneurs, that are different, that can make their path or, like succeed or fail or even, thrive in the process. What are some other things that you learned or lessons you learned along your journey in entrepreneurship, and by helping these entrepreneurs, try to achieving their goals, and through this like small business development initiative, and also at a national level, and now educating youth about entrepreneurship? Yeah, like what kind of lesson have you learned?
What I have learned, and this is, I think this is a lesson that I really learned from, that really got highlighted when I did my interviews through the podcast, is that you don't have everything. Actually, I had a guest say this. She was a young girl who was just a spitfire. And she said, everything is figure outable.
Oh my gosh. Isn't this the new book for Marie Folio?
Oh, exactly. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what she said. She said, everything is figure outable. And I'm like, you know what? That is so true. And I think sometimes what holds us back in this journey is that it's a lot. Don't get me wrong. It is a lot trying to figure out everything, but everybody who goes down this path, most of us have never done it before. And so, but we figure it out. And so you just have to kind of trust and believe that you know how to seek out answers. And I think that's a thing that, I try to teach with my children. It's like, the fact that you don't know something now is not a fixed position. It's not a fixed situation. I always say, if they're like, I don't know how to do that, I'm like, yet. It's a yet. because it takes time. You have to learn and push yourself. And so that is what I'm learning. And I've learned that, you got to be kind to yourself and how you speak to yourself, and even give yourself patience. One of the things that I used to say, about the services that we provided through the resources that, through the organizations that I ran to support small businesses, is that, being a business owner is kind of like if you've ever driven in fog, and a very, very dense, thick fog where you can barely see in front of you. And what you do see are shapes. You just see shapes, right? And what I used to say to people when I used to talk about our services, I said, that's an entrepreneur. It's like you're looking and you're like, well, what's that? And what's that? And, you can't see the form. But you know how in fog, what happens is the sun comes out and it burns the fog. And then what happens is you begin to say, oh, that was a tree, or that was a building. And I used to say that that's how we would be. Our services would support entrepreneurs by lifting that fog and enabling them to really see what's in front of them. Mm. And so I think that is, this journey, it is like you're in this fog, but there are resources. I think, that's the other lesson that I've learned is not only are there resources, but many of us have a lot more connections and access to a social capital that we often don't tap into. Mm. And it could really help to accelerate our growth in our businesses, as well as increase the chances of our business success. If we really recognize that we know people, we have connections, we just need to reach out and make people aware of kind of that we need help or what our needs are.
So along the way, like thinking about that fog analogy, is like besides the sunshine comes out, like you can also move forward, just to keep driving or keep walking until you get closer to that specific thing. And then you will see, even if the sun didn't come out, you can see what the shape or what the object or really is. So sometimes you get the outside, social help and people or resources. At the same time, if you keep sticking to your goal, just getting closer and closer to where you want to go, where you wanted to see and make that strategy and path clear, then in the end, you will get to it, right? It will be crystal clear right in front of you. Yeah, because you're so close to it, right? You are the president and also CEO for Core Strategy Partners, Inc., a consultancy that helps corporations, governments, and nonprofits develop and implement effective strategies to strengthen and advance entrepreneurial development for women, youth, and underrepresented entrepreneurs. So why is those group, like women, youth, and underrepresented entrepreneurs are so important to you? Yeah, so there must be something that drives you to help these specific groups, right?
Yeah, and actually, as a part of business, it's always like this iteration. And so you've not seen my latest iteration with my business, because really what my business is, what I focus on my business is not so much around specifically the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that's not my focus. What I do in my business is I help organizations address business challenges in a way that has a positive social impact. And so the reason why that's important to me is because, and it kind of gets to what your question was, which is around the groups that I focus on. I have a heart for helping and supporting those who are often marginalized. And so even when I was working in entrepreneurship, when I was running entrepreneurial programs, I I got involved in entrepreneurship, as you know, beginning with thinking I was going to focus on youth. But for me, it's about economic empowerment. That's what entrepreneurship is about for me, is economic empowerment. And so those groups that you talk about, that you mentioned, are groups that are economically disenfranchised in America. And so, I'm not interested. If I'm doing stuff in entrepreneurship, I'm not really interested in developing programs or doing resources that are to the benefit of already wealthy individuals who have access to a huge network and so on and so forth. That would not fill me up. Because I'm not helping to economically empower somebody who was in a different situation. So my work, my company Core Strategy Partners, what we're doing is we are helping corporations recognize and identify that looking at their work from a social impact perspective ought to be core to their business strategy. And so what that might look like is doing work that helps people who have been justice involved or formerly incarcerated, doing work that or launching initiatives that give voice to people who have been displaced and homeless. So when you think about all of those marginalized communities, that's where my heart is, and I want to do work that impacts their lives.
And in that way, not only those people get helped, but also socially and economically, you are helping the country to build a better overall thing, like by helping those people. So which I think has a lot of meaning in it. Yeah. Not only fulfills yourself, but to very different levels, it contributes. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you have over 20 years of developing and delivering entrepreneurship programs across the nation. Maybe you have or may not have designed specific programs for young entrepreneurs, but if you were to design a program for kids, for example, I don't know. Yeah. Do you have a program already? What would you include? What is the difference, between educating kids about entrepreneurship versus adult?
So 2018, I started hosting and created the Montgomery County Children's Business Fair. So that is a one-day experience for young people to have the opportunity to sell products and services that they've created. And that gives me so much joy to see these young people and just, their faces light up when they make money, because money can be a great motivator. I don't have anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with making money. I think the key is that you learn how to use those resources, your gifts, and use your resources to have a positive impact on community. And so we do that. But I feel like my mission in this space of entrepreneurial development for young people is not so much in developing programs for young people as it is in equipping families to do it themselves. So I don't want to create a camp and then you send your kids to the camp and then I teach your kids. I don't want to do that. What I want, because I want to get your buy-in in this as a parent, I want to help you see that raising kids with an entrepreneurial mindset is not an event, but it is the way that you parent. And so there are things that we can tweak in our parenting that helps to foster an entrepreneurial mindset. Just like you can parent to create a spoiled child and an entitled child, right? You can parent to create a child that is self-reliant, confident, and entrepreneurial. And so that's where I want. So when I think about programs and resources, that's where I am focused. And so we created, I always say we, I don't know, it's me. I created this book and this resource is really a toolkit called Beyond the Lemonade Stand. And it's a resource for parents to walk their kids through some simple steps on starting their first business. I mean, it's the same things that we go through as entrepreneurs, but it's communicated in a way that is fun and relevant to young people.
I think since I have also interviewed a lot of entrepreneur kids and also parents, I just think the idea of educating or even involving parents is just so important, because none of the business would exist even without the parents, really. Yeah. And we can say we teach kids about how to start a business and doing specific things, but running a business, it's also a time consuming, like energy consuming type of deal. Without the commitment from the parents, support from the parents, not saying on a financially or technical level, but also just trying to have that mindset to support the kids anytime and allowing the kids to do and accomplish whatever they want is really, really important. Yeah, I realized that later too. Like, none of the kids can do anything without their parents.
Without their parents.
No,
yeah,
no.
It can't be done. Exactly. Yeah. So that's where my focus is.
Definitely. Yeah. Last question before we dive into the podcast, because the podcast, it is about raising entrepreneurs, definitely a resource for all parents who wanted to raise entrepreneurial kids. Tell us more about your experience managing the $160 million pointed by President Obama to deliver training and technical assistance programs. Maybe give us one example of, like, say, a small business owner benefited from those programs you designed.
Yeah. So, the interesting thing is working on a local level, you see individual entrepreneurs, and who are impacted. When you go to a federal level and a national level, your touch down to the local level, it gets removed. I mean, you're just at a whole different level. But I will say, one program that I created when I was in the administration that I was really proud of is called Aspire. And it was something that we launched it with the Kellogg Foundation, and it was to provide entrepreneurship education and microloans to people who have been formerly incarcerated. And so I had the opportunity to so it was in a local community. So we launched it in St. Louis. Yeah, St. Louis, I think. Yeah, St. Louis. Gosh, my memory is St. Louis. And so I went to the kickoff of that program, and it just felt good to see individuals in that class who are so disenfranchised because of some bad mistakes or poor choices that they may have made, or maybe they didn't even make a poor choice. Maybe they were just wrongly convicted or whatever. They, to see that they saw hope in an opportunity where others had not given them the opportunity, that just really warmed my heart to say, wow. And that's why I think, the role that I played at the administration, at the small business, at the SBA, was so important for me as a Black woman, because I think it is my own lived experiences which shaped kind of what I brought to that role and where I wanted to put emphasis in who we served, or who we were more intentional about trying to reach. Because if it really is about trying to economically empower individuals, then we have to say, okay, well, who are those groups that are not being empowered economically? And let's do something specific for them to change their situation. So that was something that really, I look back on and feel really good about.
All right, that's the first part of the interview with Tameka Montgomery. Tameka has 3 sons, and along with her husband Jonathan, they created this podcast called Raising Entrepreneurs. So in next week's episodes, we are going to continue our conversation with Tameka, and we'll be chatting with her on her podcast. As a parent, Tameka is very clear about the type of people she wanted to launch into the world. So she wants to make sure her boys are fully equipped with entrepreneurial mindsets and to take on their life proactively. This is why that she started the podcast. She's on the journey to equip herself and other parents with the knowledge to raise kids who are self-reliant, resourceful, and go-getters. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode learning about Tameka's background and gain some insights into entrepreneurship. Again, this is Spark Creators, a podcast that empowers young entrepreneurs to learn, create, and become. I'm your host, Lisa, and I will see you guys next week at the same time. Bye!
Thanks for listening to the Spark Creators podcast at peachandplumlab.com.